If you're curious about whether hell is really like it's depicted in Hollywood movies, book a ticket and go straight to Phoenix. Amidst the scorching 115-degree Fahrenheit heat, when the road surface is so hot you could fry an egg on it, you'll see long lines of temporary tents springing up like mushrooms after a rain. Not in a deserted suburb, but right in the heart of the city. Those are no longer hidden corners. The entire center of Phoenix has now turned into a hellhole. The streets that were once bustling with traffic are now filled with trash, used medical supplies, and the pungent smell of despair. Those who were once workers, veterans, or even retired elderly people are now huddled under tattered tarpaulins, trying to survive the night amidst scorching heat and lurking dangers. Phoenix is heating up, not just because of the midsummer weather, and because of a crisis spreading like wildfire. In today's video, we'll venture into downtown Phoenix, which is currently enduring endless days of hell. We will meet people left behind, witness the system's helplessness, and ask a question that is not easy to answer. How did a city once hailed as a desert paradise become the new symbol of collapse? In Hollywood films, the apocalypse often begins with a mysterious pandemic. In Phoenix, the first crack signaling the collapse also began with a century-old pandemic, as silver tents gradually covered each block of the downtown area. Homelessness pandemic. A social disease that has persisted for decades with no vaccine, no escape, and seems to be gradually transforming into a terminal illness. If you've ever seen 28 Years Later, the post-apocalyptic film depicting a city left in ruins after the rage virus outbreak, you've had a taste of what collapse looks like, all from the comfort of your screen. But for the people of Phoenix, especially those living in camps, that doomsday is not a fantasy. It has lasted for decades and repeats every day. According to the 2025 point-in-time survey, Maricopa County as a whole, including Phoenix, recorded 9,734 homeless individuals. It might sound like a dry statistic, but it represents nearly 10,000 lives adrift in the city they once called home. More notably, 28% of these individuals are living entirely outdoors, without shelter or a place to stay. It's worth paying more attention to. 1 in 5 homeless people in Phoenix are over 55 years old. People who once had jobs, paid taxes, and never believed they would end up in this situation. A 54-year-old homeless veteran shared, "I put on my uniform when I was just 22 years old. Go into battle with all your faith and pride. But during one engagement, I lost a leg. They brought me back and then abandoned me on the very land I used to defend. If only this place would give me a chance to start over. I swear I will try with everything I have left, just to get off this harsh path." That is the most bitter paradox of Phoenix, and of modern America as a whole, where even those once called heroes, the hard-working, the law-abiding, those who paid their taxes in full, can still fall into destitution. And that paradox doesn't stop with the elderly or veterans. It also touches the lives of newborns, homeless children from the womb, whose mothers receive no support from the government. Not medical, no place to stay, no way out. Even more frightening, not only are these homeless people wandering the streets facing extreme heat, but they also have to contend with air pollution, the risk of dehydration, robbery, and the emotional pain of being abandoned by the entire system. Some people even deliberately commit minor crimes to get arrested and sent to prison, just for a roof over their heads, a bed to sleep on, and to escape the 115-degree Fahrenheit sun that is scorching all their hopes. It's no longer a choice of how to live. It's a survival tactic for people with no way out and nowhere to go back to. Many people still believe that homelessness is a lifestyle and a choice. But would anyone really choose to lie on concrete, bake in the scorching sun, and face danger every night, if they had any? Other option? Behind every tent is a chain of failures, flawed policies, a lack of affordable housing, a patchwork medical response, and a failing support system. Many people try to recover themselves from past wrongdoings but have nowhere to go back to. That healing journey, in the end, only extended a few more days of living in the desert, without a goal or destination. If even those who once sacrificed for the nation no longer have a place to return to, what will keep us connected in a society that is gradually losing its ability to care for even the most vulnerable? We still call this the land of opportunity, but for whom is that opportunity still available if tomorrow the very place we live also turns into a tent in the desert? Let's move on to the next part, where what was once considered a place of refuge gradually became a trap that pushed the homeless further into despair. If Skid Row is where Hollywood pushes poor souls out of the tourist lens, Phoenix also has a similar area, one that sounds like it came straight out of a post-apocalyptic script: the Zone. But here, one thing is different. No one is pushed. They came on their own, following the guidance provided by the city, and then left behind once more. Just a few blocks from the Arizona State Capitol building, the Zone was once an industrial neighborhood. Now, it's the city's largest humanitarian hotspot, which once peaked with over 1,000 homeless people crammed into tents erected close together, amidst scorching heat and the stench of excrement mixed with burning plastic. Nearby is the Human Services Campus, the city's largest shelter, providing food, medical care, and legal assistance. But when demand is overwhelming, hundreds of people seeking help are forced to set up camp right outside the walls of the place that was supposed to help them escape their situation. And so, the Zone grew like a tumor spreading through the city center. In recent years, over 4,000 911 calls have been recorded around the Zone, most of which were related to trespassing, assaults, mental health support, and campfires. Police are now required to be present at all firefighting operations because the risk of conflict is always present. The fires that erupted were not from chaos, but from people having to gather firewood to stay warm at night. And sometimes that fire sweeps away all possessions, which are only contained in a plastic bag. Even the homeless lose everything, even when they have nothing left. The facilities here, if you call them a nightmare, it's not an exaggeration. One shared toilet for 400 to 500 people, urine overflowing onto the street, organic waste collected 3 times a week, but only enough to contain the stench, not to clean the reality. Local residents shared in helplessness. I don't think my tax money should be spent on such useless cleanups. When will the city finally address the root causes of this problem? After numerous lawsuits, the Zone was successfully declared wiped out. The trash is collected, the tents disappeared. The streets returned to their neat appearance as if nothing had ever happened. But despair, something deeply ingrained in the asphalt and memories, cannot be swept away so easily. Is the Zone a public nuisance that needs to be enforced? Or is it a bitter reminder that some people, no matter how hard they try, no longer have a place in the society they once helped build? And if a city no longer has room for the very people who once believed in it, what keeps us bound together? Phoenix isn't just hot because of the desert climate. It's also because of what's melting the community's foundation from within. Just as a dangerous substance once made Kensington famous across America, Phoenix is now witnessing a downward spiral, where tiny, seemingly harmless objects can rob people of their will and shatter their future after just one slip. In many neighborhoods around the city center, it's easy to spot lost gazes, shivering bodies curled up on the sidewalks, and figures walking aimlessly in a daze. A significant portion of Phoenix's homeless population is struggling with chemical dependency, a factor that makes it even more difficult for them to escape living on the streets. This isn't just a story about poverty. It's a combination of psychological trauma, lack of medical support, and a vicious cycle that's not easy to break. The poverty rate in Phoenix in 2025 is at 15%. That is, for every 7 people, at least 1 is living below the poverty line, in a city once considered a symbol of opportunity and development in the Southwest. While Maricopa County as a whole, including Phoenix, has only about 12% of its population below the poverty line. The rate in inner-city Phoenix is significantly higher, indicating that poverty is heavily concentrated in the very center of the city. And as a harsh rule, where it is poorer, there it is more vulnerable. Regarding crime statistics, 2025 saw a bright spot. Serious cases such as assault or even murder decreased significantly compared to 2 years prior. However, not all areas of the city feel that sense of security. Property crime, especially car theft, is on the rise again, partly due to the popularity of videos showing how to break into certain car models like Kia and Hyundai. It sounds like a harmless joke, but those clips are fueling a wave of thefts, leaving people in constant fear, even when parking in front of their own homes. On average, Phoenix is recording about 40 crimes per 1,000 residents. But more importantly, that instability is not evenly distributed. Some places have recovered, while others are still in a deep decline. Neighborhoods that were once peaceful now have to increase security measures, install cameras, and learn to live in constant vigilance. Meanwhile, low-income areas, often also where the homeless congregate, have become urban security black holes, where support programs haven't reached or are insufficient. Nevertheless, the city wasn't completely stagnant either. Community outreach programs, mental health crisis response teams, and targeted patrol forces are showing some positive changes. But amidst the alleys without streetlights and the tents crammed together in the scorching sun, the feeling of a Phoenix losing itself still manifests every day. Perhaps what haunts people the most isn't the statistics on the board, but the fact that a city once filled with faith, attachment, and dreams of prosperity is now struggling to rediscover its lost identity. And the question needs to be asked, not just for Phoenix, but for all of us. If poverty continues to take root, if these dark elements continue to silently infiltrate, will Phoenix still be Phoenix? And eventually, it will become a forgotten name on the map, no longer representing what it once stood for. There's a quiet paradox unfolding in Phoenix, and becoming increasingly common in many major US cities. You have a job, you work enough hours, you don't overspend. But by the end of the month, you still won't have enough money to pay rent. The homelessness crisis, in the eyes of many, is a story of the lazy, the addicted, or the failures. But most of them didn't fall to the bottom of society because they gave up. They fell because the ground beneath them was silently being eroded piece by piece, starting from what seemed like the safest place, their home. In Phoenix, in 2025, the average rent for a rundown apartment will be around $425 per month. At that price, plus utilities, food, transportation, and other basic necessities, a single person needs about $5,203 per month, equivalent to over $62,000 per year before taxes, just to maintain a barely sufficient standard of living. But ask yourself, how many unskilled jobs today pay that much? And how many people can maintain that income level if they happen to have an accident, a hospital bill, or simply lose their job? Not just renting. Home prices in Phoenix, although cooling down, with an average below $450,000, are still a distant dream for most residents. The prolonged housing shortage, high borrowing costs, and widening income gap are pushing many people out of the market, even those who work hard. In that context, it's not hard to understand why homelessness is no longer someone else's problem, but is gradually becoming a risk for anyone. A small financial setback in life, a missed paycheck, or simply a rent increase, any of these can be enough to push a family into homelessness. And then, many of them continue to face suspicious and scornful looks, as if it were their fault for not keeping their homes. But there's still hope, if we dare to look the problem straight in the eye. Models like the affordable modular housing from Pallet Shelter or Dignity Moves could be a quick assembly solution for safe temporary shelters. Short-term rental assistance programs such as the Housing Choice Voucher or platforms like Haven Connect help people apply for low-income housing more efficiently. New technologies are also playing an active role, from PadSplit to home search apps like Zillow and Zumper, all of which can support those struggling with housing costs. Most importantly, it's about breaking the stereotype that having a job is enough to live on. Reality has proven that this is no longer true. If someone works hard 40 hours a week and still can't afford rent, the fault isn't with them, but with a system that makes their efforts meaningless. And if we continue to allow hard-working people to sleep in their cars or on the sidewalks, then at some point, the whole city will have to ask itself, so who will be left to build its future? In a country that once prided itself on leaving no one behind, perhaps the most painful question now is, if you fall, who will catch you? With millions of seniors relying on Social Security for about $800 a month, a sum that once covered their housing, medication, and a modest but stable life. But in Phoenix, where the cost of living is rising every day, that amount of money isn't even enough to pay rent for a small room anymore. I remember a 72-year-old woman who once said through tears, "I worked and paid taxes my whole life, and yet when I needed help the most, no one was there." She used to be an office secretary and has been retired for over 10 years. Now, every month she has to choose, buy blood pressure medication or pay the electricity bill. That so-called choice is, in reality, a silent coercion that this system is pushing the most vulnerable people into. Rental assistance programs still haven't responded for months. Many shelters are overcrowded, unsafe, or only for specific groups. Free healthcare services are remote, overcrowded, or only operate a few days a week. Every piece of the social safety net is unraveling, leaving gaps that no one can fill. It's often called a safety net. But the reality is that for many, it's just a tattered spiderweb, fragile, hastily woven, and easily broken when the weight of a lifetime bears down on it. In Phoenix, there are many elderly people forced to live in cars, warehouses, or park corners because they don't qualify for assistance. These are no longer exceptions. They are gradually becoming common reality. And that truth makes one wonder, is there anything left that keeps us connected in a society that is gradually losing its ability to care for even the most vulnerable? Because if even those who have worked their whole lives and contributed to this country can fall out of the system, then who among us is truly safe? There is something invisible that determines the life of every public policy, and that is community trust. It's not faith in beautiful promises, but faith that if someone falls to the bottom, the system will have a handrail for them to hold onto. But in Phoenix, that belief is crumbling. Not because of a sudden event, but because of a slow, gradual erosion, bit by bit, every day. Phoenix residents once felt proud that their city was known for its sunshine, its vitality, and the openness of the American West. They have donated before, volunteered to cook meals for the needy, and voted in favor of increasing the budget to help the homeless. But today, as they drove through street corners filled with tents, as they heard midnight screams right outside their homes, as they saw children walking on sidewalks right next to people huddled in the heat, a question began to echo in their minds. Did all the previous efforts really change anything? A recent survey shows that the percentage of Phoenix residents who support raising taxes to address the homelessness crisis has decreased significantly compared to 3 years ago. More and more people are choosing not sure or oppose. Not necessarily because they lack compassion, but because they've lost faith that their tax dollars are being used effectively. Nothing pushes a person to the sidelines faster than indifference. But the irony is, the very people who cared the most are the ones who are most easily disappointed. Because they had expectations, they had hoped, and now they feel betrayed. However, trust is not something that is immutable. It can be rebuilt. If the government dares to act transparently, if the community is given genuine dialogue, if the numbers in the report are linked to real people and real events, trust will return if people see that every penny they contribute, no matter how small, is changing a specific life, not disappearing into nothingness. If even those who once wholeheartedly helped are gradually losing faith in the possibility of change, then what do we have left to hold a city together beside resignation and silent decay? If a city could predict the future of an entire nation, then Phoenix is the flesh and blood warning. Not noisy, without warning. It's just that the cracks are silently spreading. A few tents pitched by the roadside, a few elderly people sleeping next to empty parking lots, a few children no longer going to school. Then one day, it was no longer an exception, but became part of the rhythm of urban life. Phoenix was once considered the city of the sun, an ideal destination for those looking to start over, for retirees seeking a warm, affordable place with a friendly community. However, that sunlight no longer carries the symbolic meaning of hope. It is the scorching heat that burns the skin of the homeless, the slow evaporation of the welfare system, and the ray of light that exposes the crumbling limits of society. The economy is still growing. High-rise buildings continue to spring up. But below the surface, waves of poverty, distrust, and social isolation are rising. What's concerning isn't just the number of homeless people, but the normalization of this phenomenon. When people start getting used to stepping over people sleeping on the sidewalk, as if they were part of the city's architecture. When stories of harsh survival are just a fleeting headline on the morning news. When we ourselves gradually stop feeling confused or angry, that's when the issue is no longer just policy, but a crack in the collective mental structure. Is Phoenix just an isolated phenomenon? Or is it a microcosm of America's future, when the cost of living far exceeds income, when the safety net becomes too complex to access, and when people have to choose between dinner and rent? Why is a country that once prided itself on being the land of opportunity increasingly seeing more and more people feeling permanently stuck on the sidelines? Phoenix is a city, but at the same time, it's a symbol of the fragile boundary between order and chaos, between self-reliance and abandonment, between promise and reality. If we don't listen to what's happening here, then perhaps what happens next won't just be the story of a city. So, the future we're heading toward, is it something we choose? Or is it something we just let happen? We used to believe in an America that leaves no one behind. An America where everyone deserves a home, a second chance, and an old age not lived in fear. Yet, from Phoenix to Los Angeles, from Skid Row to the Zone, more and more people are slipping out of the very dream they helped create. When a nation allows the elderly to sleep on concrete, veterans to go hungry in the streets, and children to be born in tents, it's not just a policy failure, it's a crack in the collective soul, a reminder that we are slowly becoming accustomed to the unacceptable. What do you think? Do we still have enough time and faith to fix things? Or is it too late to save what once made America lovable? Please share your thoughts. Because it's possible that change begins with the smallest things. A question asked at the right moment. If what you just saw resonated with you in any way, please leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can continue to tell stories that not everyone is willing to listen to, but everyone needs to know. Each share is an opportunity to add one more person who understands, one more person who cares, and one more ray of hope for those whose lives are lived in silence. This video is not intended to condemn any organization, individual, or political group. All information presented is based on publicly available data, official reports, and field observations from multiple perspectives. The stories, images, and perspectives presented are educational in nature, reflecting social realities to stimulate constructive discussion without creating incitement, panic, or stereotyping. We do not condone any illegal behavior whatsoever. We do not normalize suffering, and we do not turn human misery into entertainment. This is not a conclusion, but an invitation to reflect together, to dialogue together, and to hold on to the remaining humanity within each of us.